Hi, it's Shelley Robson from the Quilted Forest presenting clue number 2 for the mystery quilt. This week we will be cutting from fabric B and the background fabric, and it's a simple half square triangle that you'll be making this week, so nothing too hard. Make sure to look at your fabric key so that you cut from the right fabrics and you don't need to go purchase more fabric. You want to make sure you're always double checking that. When I'm cutting, one of the first things I will do is I will cut the selvage edge off my piece of fabric. I like to save selvages. I've got a couple projects that I'm working on, and look how cute that one is. So cut those selvages off. You don't want any of that white in your strips. You will need to cut 4 strips that are 4 7/8 by the width of the fabric. I have my fabric doubled. If you were more comfortable cutting single layers, that would be an excellent choice too. I am also going to cut strips from my background fabrics that are 4 7/8 by width of fabric. The same number of these strips, 4 of those. Now that we've got our strips cut, it's time to cut squares out of those strips. So the squares will measure 4 7/8 by 4 7/8. There are other ways to make half square triangles, so if you have a method that works better for you, using triangles on a roll or thangles, what you need to know is you need 4-inch finished triangles. Now that the squares are cut, it's time to cut corner to corner on each of these. There will be 26 of the green and 26 of the background, or fabric B and the background, and you're going to cut corner to corner. Now that the triangles are all cut, I take a little time to stack them up so I've got right sides together and I've got a fabric B and a background fabric together. This helps me go a little faster when I'm at the sewing part of this, and the nice thing is I can easily figure out the, especially when it's hard to tell on the fabric, which side is the right side up. It's a little easier to do them all at once than to try to do it as you're sewing. It seems to go a little faster. So we're sewing with a 1/4 inch seam, and we're just going to start feeding these through and chain stitching these. So you're not going to sew one at a time, you're going to send them all through just one right after another. I'm using my diagonal seam tape. I'm following that line on the right to help me feed these through a little straighter so I'm not wobbly. And the one thing you want to watch for is, because the cut here is on the bias, it's a little stretchy, so you want to make sure you're just handling it gently and letting it kind of feed itself through the machine instead of pulling on it. If you pull on it, you're going to stretch out that seam. It's not going to lay flat and you won't like it very much. So try not to stretch those as you're sewing them. Now it's time to cut apart all those chain stitch triangles. And what I'm going to be using is a blade saver. This is a handy little tool. You can take it apart with the screw here, and you want to put a blade inside there. Just use one of your old blades that nicks everything now. And you drop it in this slot, and this gives you a place to cut your fabrics apart. You can't even cut your finger. You can't get it in there. The nice thing about these is they store really handy inside this case. It's magnetic, so you pull it apart, drop that in there so you can store it easily. And then when you want to use it, you take it out and set it on a table. The magnets stick together, drop that piece in, kind of looks like a little flower, and it's stable because it's got little rubber grippers on the bottom. And then you just start cutting these apart, and it makes this part go much faster than using a scissor. When you're doing your pressing, I find it nice to have my pieces kind of set up so it's easy to grab them. So I'll have all the dark fabric on top because I'm going to be pressing towards the dark. And then I will pick one up and then kind of lay it over the top of the other when I'm done. And I am not pushing hard on the iron. I'm kind of lightly getting it in place and then letting the iron rest there for a minute to get it hot and lay that seam nice and flat. You can use some Mary Ellen's pressing spray or a spray starch if you want. I usually don't at this point, but if you like that feeling of the finished pieces, this would be a great time to use that. Now that we have our pieces pressed, I like to trim just to make sure they're super accurate. You want to get rid of the dog ears anyway, those little triangles that hang off the edge of the half square triangle unit. And so I will just use my block lock ruler, or you can use any kind of square ruler that you can measure from, and just get the little bits that are overhanging the ruler on that marking. So these will measure 4.5 by 4.5 at this point. Now that your pieces are all trimmed, put them in a baggie with either clue number 1 or on its own bag, and put them in a safe place so you know where they're at, and we can go again next week. Thanks for watching.